So the old Tinny, she's a bit rough. Had a few problems with the fuel line and some fittings, which I've replaced since. I put some new fuel in it and it was running, well, it was running. Last time I took it out, but it was running pretty rough and not ideal. So my goal today is I'm going to pull the carby off of it and strip it down. This Tinny had been sitting for a long time before we bought it. And it's been sitting a long time since we've had it as well. So fuel doesn't last too long and it goes off after a while, but two-stroke especially, the petrol evaporates off and it leaves the oil and it can turn into like a gum and sort of like a jelly in the bottom of the carbies, which is not good. So my goal is to clean the carby out and see if I can get it to run a little bit sweeter than what it was running last time, because I've got a few plans. I'd like to do a few trips with the Tinny. First of all, I want to make sure it's reliable and running good. Disclaimer, I am not a boat mechanic. I'm not a mechanic. I'll just have a go. I'll pull things apart. It's probably going to be people online screaming, going, oh, that's not how you do it. Whatever, I'll do what works for me. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I'll have to employ a mechanic to do it for me properly. Anyway, I'm going to get busy and I'll strip this carby off and we'll have a look what's inside of it. Alright, I've got the carby off. I'm not going to go too crazy stripping this right down or anything silly like that. All I really want to do is get the bowl off of here and just make sure there's no rubbish in the bowl. It's always run a little bit funny since we got this Tinny. It had been sitting around for a long time. So after a while, two-stroke fuel tends to go to jelly and gets a little bit stale and a bit funny. So sometimes you just got to pull the bottom of the, I don't know if you can see in there. The fuel's looking to be very yellow in colour. It's actually pretty clean in there. It's cleaner than I was expecting it to be. I'm just going to give that a bit of a squirt out. Bit of degreaser. You could use carby cleaner if you got it, but I've got degreaser here, so I'll just use that. Just get all that old fuel. So that fuel had gone pretty thick and sort of gelatinous, if that's even a word, gelatinous. That's what happens, it gets in there and then it gets into the jets and it just kind of makes things run a bit rough. So a bit of degreaser, I'm just going to clean that out. And that bowl's beautiful and clean there now. So I'm happy with that. Then there's the needle and seat, which actually fell out a second ago, which is probably handy there. So this little needle here, all it takes is a tiny little bit of stuff to get stuck on that. And that'll clog up your flow into the carby as well. So while I got that out, I'll give that a bit of a spray with degreaser through there, make sure that's all nice and clean before I put that back in there. Give the float a bit of a clean down. And then I'm pretty much just going to stick the bowl back on there and again now. Put my float back in and then I'll put the bowl back on there again. Just put it in there, make sure it sits down there sort of where it's meant to. And then this one's only held in with one bolt. Don't over tighten these things. Just sort of nip it up.
I'm leaving now.
And then there's the mixture screw here, which I'm going to turn this in and see how many turns in it goes. 1, 2, 2 1/4 screws in, so I know where that sits later on. It's 2 1/4 screws out from fully seated. I'm going to pull that out. I'm actually going to unscrew this mixture screw a little bit because this motor has always had a bit of a sneeze down low when it's idling. Generally that's because it's running a bit too lean down low and it starts to sneeze a little bit. Mixer screw actually looks nice and clean, that's okay. But just be sure, another squirt of degreaser in here. Just make sure that's not blocked or anything, there's no shit in there, that'll clean that out. Mixture screw can go back in. Turn that all the way back in and then out 2 turns, or 2 1/4 turns. I'm actually going to bring it out 2 1/2. Bringing it out 2 1/2 because I want to richen that up a little bit, because it's always run a little bit lean down low, I think. You can access this from inside anyway, so that's adjustable when the motor's running. I'll just feel it out, see what it sounds like, see how it runs. If I think it needs a little bit more, wants to run a bit richer, I'll screw it out a bit. If it's bogging down and seems like it's getting too much fuel, I'll just screw it back in a little bit and just sort of feel it out. Apart from that, I'm not touching anything else on this Carby. I'm keeping it pretty much as is. I just wanted to make sure this bowl was clean more than anything, and make sure there's no jelly in the bottom, which there was a little bit. I've cleaned that out now. So now I've just got to put it all back together and give it a run, see how she goes. Alright, I put it back together. Pretty simple. There's only really four nuts and 2 hoses, 1 fuel hose, 1 vacuum hose underneath. It all went back together pretty smartly. Now the big test, I guess, we'll give it a start, make sure she runs. Hopefully this will just stay here and not fall over, but probably will. This hasn't run for a good couple of months at least, so we'll see how she goes. That's cut out, it's cold, but it already sounds like it's idling way better than it probably ever has, to be honest. I think once that warms up, it's probably going to be all right. I can't really tell, it hasn't sneezed yet, I can't really tell yet, but the sneeze was coming pretty much at really low throttle, sort of like trolling speeds. I won't be able to know that until I get it in the water. If I put it into gear and run it, it's just going to empty this bucket in quick time, and then I'll have no water getting to it. Seems like it's running alright. Next step will be to take it for a spin. Might take up the rear engine. Yeah. Look at that. That's the smoothest. That's the smoothest and quietest that has ever run. See how she goes. Check this out. Absolutely magical. So this is the best, I think this is the best this motor's ever run. Quick clean out was all it needed. Get ready now, it's got a few little things we got to sort out. The sounder, it's got a few problems recognising the transducer, but we'll sort that out. We need some new flares because the flares are out of date, but we're getting it ready and we're going to do some adventures in the Tinny. Probably a couple of camping trips, maybe a little trip to Shark Bay. We're going to give it a bit of a run. At least it's running properly. Before it was a little bit rough and a little bit unreliable, and I wasn't too happy taking it too far, but now she seems sweet. If you like our videos, stay tuned and I'll see you all in the next episode.